Thank you very much, Andy, and hello again to everybody. I'm glad to be here again today to share some exciting insights that we have from the GBS.World Competitiveness Index. So, Andy, thank you for that kind introduction. And then we're going to go into John will then speak, and Joel, who also joins us today, and then we'll be having a discussion between the three of us. Quick introduction to the World Source Marketplace for Global Business Services, GBS.World, which is basically a marketplace that connects global providers of GBS services with enterprise buyers and business buyers in the GBS and BPO space. This marketplace has newly launched. We're very excited by the traction and support that we've been getting from various partners in the industries in the sector, including BPESA, TKG, who join us today, as well as other partners that have been onboarded and service providers that have supported the marketplace. And as part of that service, we, Knowledge Executive and Genesis, as also strategic partners to the GBS.World marketplace, are providing market research and advisory services to enable and support a lot of the services that we're providing, including profiling analyses, location reviews of key GBS locations, profiling analyses of service providers that enable us to then really provide really good, solid insights to drive the marketplace and drive engagement in the marketplace forward. One of those is the index itself. I'll start sharing with you some advanced results and insights that have come forward in this regard. So the index covers various areas of global business services, including CX and back office, digital and ITO, finance and accounting, legal services, human resource management, and learning services. Today, I'm sharing with you the results that have come through from the CX and back office component of the index. And what we did is we interviewed over 360 global buyers in the key source markets, Australia, the UK, the US, to get a clear understanding of their experience when they outsource and offshore services to various locations. So the selection of buyers that we targeted was very targeted for very much those buyers that are outsourcing and offshoring. We wanted to make sure that they are. And in that regard, we then almost ran like a CSAT survey with them to get into their minds and understand the experiences that they're having when they go to these locations. And the first area that we covered was data management and the CX and back office results. And you can see here some interesting results that have come forward where Eastern Europe is performing quite well in this regard. No surprises there. Countries such as Poland and Estonia, Croatia, Czechia, and Hungary did quite well in these rankings, including countries from the Asia-Pac region. India did very well. And from Africa, Egypt and South Africa were great performers in this regard. South Africa scored 5th place with a score of 5.87. The other area that we covered in the CX and back office index was that of digital channel contact center engagement. In this regard, South Africa was also ranked in the top 5 locations by the buyers that we interviewed for the survey. The Philippines took the top spot in that regard as a preferred global destination. And important to note that these services include your traditional digital contact center channel services. So web chat, email, social media support services was what was ranked and rated here. India and Egypt were also in the top 5, along with South Africa. So very interesting to see these results. You can see again that there were good results that came from the other regions, from the Central and Latin American region, as well as the Eastern European region in this regard. The next area that we covered was that of back office processing. Here, Asia-Pac dominates in this regard. So India and Philippines were the top 2. But good news for South Africa is that South Africa came 3rd in this and was ranked 3rd by the global buyers that we spoke to, followed by Malaysia and then Egypt. Your Eastern European countries, Bulgaria, Croatia, Poland, also did quite well. as well as some Central and Latin American countries such as Mexico and Jamaica. This gives you an idea of the Customer Support Administration rankings and scores that were delivered by the index. Here, Malaysia took the top spot. South Africa was ranked in second place, followed by the Philippines, India, and Hungary. Again, you could see that there is definitely strength in these locations. And a lot of these locations were also ranked and rated in the recent global front office BPO omnibus survey by Ryan Strategic Advisory. You can see there's fairly good alignment with what our index is saying and what the survey from Ryan Strategic Advisory also put out. And then the fifth and final category that we covered was that of your broader customer experience lifecycle management. So, the big announcement there is that South Africa took the first spot globally for customer lifecycle management services. So that was really good for the country to do that, and also very much supports what the other surveys that are coming out in regards to how buyers and investors that outsource to South Africa, how they feel about the location and where it is placed in this regard. That was followed by the Philippines, Egypt. So Egypt took the third spot, Malaysia and India. Again, all very trusted locations, mature locations. There's a lot of good talent and expertise there. So these locations, Malaysia, Philippines, India, Egypt, consistently are ranking quite highly in the indexes. Then I just wanted to highlight that this is for CX and back office. So we're going to the next slide. You'll note, I just wanted to note here that GBS.World plans to release the results for other areas of global sourcing. So we've got the digital and ITO rankings coming through, finance and accounting, legal and debt recovery, human resource management are the next indexes that are going to be released. You're going to be seeing us releasing those over the next few months and into 2022. And we'll be excited to share those key findings with you and unpack those further. Thank you. And that was my presentation and news of the day. I want to now hand over to John.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. It's always nice to look at the data and see what all the data is actually saying and if it matches up with what the buyers are actually saying. It's been an interesting time with COVID that's really put a big spotlight on South Africa for a lot of different reasons. Companies have always kind of tried to segregate where they're putting their work. And, what we've really kind of realized that your data just showed is one size fits none. And what I mean by that is, they're usually looking at non-voice, back office support, contingency plans and disaster recovery in a variety of different areas. And what we saw this time, really more than anything else, was that companies were very vulnerable during COVID. They were vulnerable because they hadn't planned for a lot of the different situations that occurred. Some of those situations were around the government support. A lot of people saw themselves very, very heavily in Asia. And, not everybody was deemed essential workers. As a result of that, if people had a lot of their call center volumes in the Philippines, it might be more and more challenging to get their agents to their actual brick and mortar facilities. As a result of that, it really put pressure on people to do at-home agents. That can be very, very challenging in the Philippines as the infrastructure there isn't really able to support it. They've evolved quite a bit and really were able to move quickly, but it also was really hard for people to be able to hit volumes with some latency issues and some compliance issues. As a result of that, I think it really shined a big spotlight on South Africa as they were able to do some of those things very successfully. So I think government support was extremely important and very critical. Looking at the infrastructure from the internet and from a capability standpoint, from a workforce, really got people focused on it. And that's what we've been hearing a lot of lately, not just within South Africa, but also within nearshore. Some of the nearshore opportunities have really been, a little bit more desirable because it's easier to get there. Especially with COVID, companies are very restricted on travel. So if they can get somewhere very quickly and get back, it's much, much easier to do so. The problems that we saw with some of the nearshore areas were really, really driven around the ability to scale. which the Philippines, as we just saw in March data, were really, some of the top areas where they could support this. As a result of that, companies were looking to fill that void with another desirable area that they were able to look at. Some interesting findings when speaking to buyers, when they were looking at South Africa and were listening to the accents, they were looking at what they were calling a positive increase in CSAT that they were finding in areas like Jamaica, where they found U.S. buyers really trying to relate and want to enjoy talking to the call center agent. And they were measuring this from a couple of different ways. A lot of it was customer feedback and surveys, but really just looking at the overall CSAT and then utilizing their technology so they could really, measure the reduced number of I can't understand you when they were using speech analytics and NLP type of stuff. And then really the bottom line was all around higher conversion, which is really what they're really measuring if it comes down to it from a financial standpoint. So where the excitement and where the opportunity, I think, has really been out for South Africa is they feel that not only does it have the infrastructure to support that from a technology and from an internet perspective, but really also where they think it's going to be a pleasant action result to be able to drive those KPIs that I just mentioned there. Furthermore, I think it's very important that everybody has continued to see the positive light that the DTIC and BPESA has really been able to put to ensure that that workforce can continue to get back and forth from work on a daily basis. There's very little downtime during COVID where they weren't able to do that, and I think that is something that more and more people need to know about. So how can we get that out there from there? The only other thing that I can kind of see where we've taken buyers down there and feedback is a lot of the buyers don't realize that South Africa has been supporting U.S. companies and a lot of UK companies for quite a while. When I hear the word emerging market, it's kind of like, well, not really. They've been around for a very long time. And I hate to use the word re-emerging because it doesn't do it justice. What I see is it expanding in its capabilities and visibility. As a result of that, I think BPOs have a huge opportunity over the next couple of years to really capitalize on organizations that are trying to drive some of their volumes to different parts of the world right now. Furthermore from that, I think looking at technology coming in, there's a lot of conversational AI that's occurring. It's taking a lot of the actual voice work where people are able to do simple interactions that were being done in some offshore locations that are now being done through automation. With that being said, the voice work is somewhat shrinking as people go through CAI or go through other digital adaption formats. So I think where South Africa truly shines is they're able to handle more complex calls and higher quality calls. So as technology comes in to intervene with some of these, I really think it's a great opportunity to showcase the quality of work that South Africa can do. I know we just have a little bit more time here, so I do want to make sure that we have a good amount of time for Joel to join us. So Joel, I'm just going to quickly provide a quick introduction for you as I appreciate in the short amount of time we've known each other on how much information you've been able to share with me. And really, having first moved from the UK to South Africa, I believe it was around 2002, I know you're going to be able to, talk about what you and your peers have kind of looked for when moving work around the world from a service delivery location. I know that you led Vodafone's call center procurement business for 10 years with over 55,000 agents in 35 countries. Ideally, place to open up debate about what buyers are looking for. So I'm really looking forward to your insight. I know that you've been in call centers your whole life. I don't know whether to say well done or why, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I know you've worked on different buy, build, and operate global business services. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Joel Walker, who is a co-founder and the COO of the Knowledge Group.
Perfect. Thanks, John. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you, Mark, for sharing that data earlier. I'm not sure that there's a lot more to add by way of introduction or background. As to why I'm still in contact centers, I'm 46 and still working out what I want to do when I grow up. But right now, and for the last 25 years, I found myself in an industry that I'm completely in love with. I guess I've joined this session, and this is the first time that I've presented a BPESA session. I'm here to give some buyer perspectives, really. So, I'll build a little bit for a moment or two on what John said about why me. I'll then share some reflections on South Africa. And again, it's a country I've been working in and out of over the last 20 years. And then maybe some suggestions to help unlock more value for providers, service providers and buyers looking in on South Africa based on my experiences over the last few years. So my love affair with South Africa started in Cape Town about 20 years ago. I was designing, building and running Orange's offshore operations at the time, and we moved some work down to a company called WDS, Wireless Data Services. They were ultimately, I think, bought by Xerox and then rebadged as Conduent, but we're doing a fantastic job down there. At the same time as we were moving a tiny amount of people to South Africa, I was living and working in India, where we were going from 0 to about 2,500 people. And part of the reason that I'm here today, I guess, is to make sure that we don't exist in an echo chamber within this community, and that we're honest and open about both all the fantastic things that South Africa brings to the global business services environment, but also that we're honest about some of the limitations and how we can overcome those. And in 2002, I don't think South Africa was ready for the scale, and certainly there weren't many providers mature enough to absorb 2,500 heads. So we went to India. We had a fantastic time there. It was almost one of the first big UK brands to start to scale in India, and it was doing so at a time where it was outperforming the business that had been left behind in the UK. So I think if you fast forward from that early flirtation with South Africa nearly 20 years ago, and as John said, I've spent much of the last 10 years looking after Vodafone's global contact center spend, and that is a substantial amount of money, over €1 billion worth of spend. That's just on the people. That's thousands and thousands of agents, over 100 suppliers in about 35 different countries. If I'm honest, I think South Africa is probably underrepresented in that footprint today. And I was responsible for recommending and then overseeing the movement of around 2,000 jobs, just under that, from the UK, Vodafone UK estate into South Africa with two partners that we've heard from a couple of those today, but with Webhelp and with TP. But again, that work that originally went across ended up coming back, and I think it's important that we start to understand some of the reasons that that came back. That was nothing to do with South Africa, but was some challenges that the UK had. And it essentially went on to automate large amounts of what that demand was. I think that the experiences that we've had in South Africa now as a global leadership community of buyers is that South Africa, and I think this sort of underlines Mark's point, South Africa now is absolutely at the cutting edge of global customer contact delivery. So 20 years ago, it wasn't mature enough. 10 years and 9 years ago, when we moved Vodafone to move that work, it probably wasn't as mature enough. I think now the building blocks that have been reinforced through the hard work of BPESA, of Cape BPO, and of practitioners across the sector in South Africa are really started to build out credible solutions that global buyers like me and my predecessors, my peers, can trust and tap into and start to unlock the real advantages that South Africa offers. Now, I've left Vodafone now. I'm the COO of the Knowledge Group. And I don't think you're here for a sales pitch on the Knowledge Group. That can come at a later point. I think that I'm I have an obligation, I think, to bring to life South Africa rather than the TKG organisation. But just to say, it's a disruptive sourcing advisory business that's helping businesses unlock new ways of buying services, and we're working closely with Mark and his team in GBS.World to try and sort of present a new way of buying services out to the buying community. So the messages I've delivered so far, I guess, and hope people understand, come from a position of sort of love and respect. But one of the reasons I'm the COO of the Knowledge Group is because I'm maybe too honest sometimes, certainly very direct. And I think that the ambition I have, though, for our organisation is one that's matched by my ambition for South Africa to continue to grow and invest. And I think sometimes that means starting to process and understand sometimes messages that are perhaps not difficult to listen to, but require some reflection. And that this isn't just an echo chamber, isn't everything fantastic. I think there needs to be a balance and a contrast in conversations like this. And I think for me, we talked around what are the buyer's expectations looking in on South Africa, or looking in on any destination actually. And Mark's data is a numerical and very qualitative assessment of the capabilities of different geographies against different activities. I guess my reflections are probably a little cruder, and they're certainly not as well evidence-based as Mark, but I typically used to look for 5 things when I was looking in a new geography, and as with most consultancies, it needs to be in a 4-box model, or it needs to vary 5 points. Mine was always the 5 C's. So when people would always ask me, what is it you're looking for? I would always talk about the 5 C's. And the first was capacity. Is there scale there? You know, we had 85,000 agents at one point in my Vodafone tenure. So little pockets of activity here and there, whilst interesting if for sort of niche specialist skills or languages, wasn't, you know, sometimes, you know, you need capacity. Now, South Africa, you know, high unemployment. I think the capacity question for South Africa is clearly resolved. It's there, and it's the headcount is there, and the skills are really there. So beyond capacity, I would then look at credibility. And that's because global buyers, like a lot of buyers, are sometimes very lazy. And they would look to see what other brands are there already. So are there, you know, are my peers there? Are the competition there? Are the, you know, am I going to still be in a job in 12 months if I recommend South Africa? It's a much easier sales process for me if I can say, yeah, because, you know, A, B, and C are already there. So does the capacity exist? Is it credible? So has it got the capability? Is it really different? Is it moving up the value chain? And for South Africa, hopefully that's the case. And the sign off of the master plan, I think, is a fantastic statement of intent to build continue to build on the credibility of South Africa. I then think we look at cost. Now, cost, you might think is a big, ugly, middle-aged buyer. I'm only after, you know, finding the rock bottom prices for anything. But I think as people's expectations of service has developed, more sophisticated understandings of the cost drivers in contact centers and the total cost of ownership for support operations, the cost perspective is certainly not the number one, but it needs to be one of those parameters. There are and there always will be cheaper locations in South Africa, but I'm not sure that there will be many better value locations. So that maturity of South Africa with a great capacity, great credibility, and at good cost starts to make that an even more compelling proposition for buyers. I think the last 2 C's or the lenses that I apply onto that are, what's the level of competition like? At a micro level, that means within a building or within a town or within a city. I don't want to be involved in my partners to be involved in a street fight for resources. And whilst competition global level is fierce, and we saw that with Mark's data. There's very small margins sometimes between different locations, and that's the same when you're selecting partners. Sometimes the margins and the distinctions are very fine. So whilst there's a fierce competition at a global level for attraction of activity, and hopefully South Africa wins that or succeeds in that fight. As a buyer, I'm also looking at the levels of competition in and around the providers that I'm looking to collaborate with. And I gave you a sneak preview there of the fifth C, which is one of collaboration, or sometimes this sort of development of coalitions, because for me that's the future for South Africa. That's a real sweet spot for South Africa as a capability, is to start to unpick ways of collaborating differently. There's great, fantastic partners in South Africa at a global level, Webhelp and Teleperformance. At a more regional level, Capita, Merchant, CCI. And then you've got some of the smaller providers, and are great businesses, Eye Contact, Synergy, Outworks. There's a very mature and ambitious sort of smaller providers, but that aren't getting access to opportunities. They're not getting the visibility. So, for me, it's how well are those local providers able to collaborate, and are there mechanisms for orchestrating those smaller partners into being able to bid for larger opportunities. And that's where organizations like TKG can help with that orchestration around building managed service providers, building MSPs, being ecosystem partners, so helping choreograph the work of smaller partners as they're bidding for larger bits of work. So I think those 5 C's, just to recap, all suggest South Africa's going in the right direction from a international buyer's perspective. Capacity, certainly there. Credibility, absolutely. Competition, looks reasonable. Cost, attractive, and collaboration, certainly developing. So I think the indicators are there to suggest that the future is rosy. And I guess I'm not sure that I should be ending on a joke, but maybe on a piece of good news to leave you with, because as I said, I'm trying to instill some contrast to the topic, and not to be overly positive, but also just to balance some of those more difficult messages at the start. When I say that the time is perfect for South Africa, again, I don't want to turn this into a party political broadcast, but if we look just at the UK, which is an area I know well, and John has spoken already about, the US labour market, but the UK, and again, non-political, but post-Brexit, there are labour market challenges now that you would have seen in the press, I'm sure, around haulage drivers and fruit picking and vegetable picking and all that good stuff. And whether there are or aren't enough workers is an emotive topic that's for smarter minds than mine. But what's for certain is that inflation is starting to accelerate. The results announced just a couple of days ago, 4.5% at a micro level. At a macro level. At a micro level, within contact centres, that's becoming even more of a pressing concern in terms of the rises to minimum wages, etc., that are coming into effect, which are pushing up the domestic price further. So not only is inflation rising in the UK, there's an availability of talent that, we've always called it a war on talent. It may well have just been a skirmish looking at what next year could hold for contact centre resourcing. So I think South Africa is ideally placed to be capitalising on the political context and the staffing challenges that the UK is facing into. And if you look across the suite of reports that GBS build, you can really see that for a majority of the services, they're in the top 2 or 3, certainly in the top 5 globally. And this is a competitive landscape, but South Africa is winning. And I think the signature of the master plan gives a really strong signal out to the international community that South Africa is open for business and it's ready for more business. So look forward to watching that growth continue.
I couldn't agree more, Joel. Thank you so much. I think it's so important to get that global perspective there. And now I know we're going to be transitioning into another presentation. And John, it looks like you were able to join us. So if you want to just quickly introduce that, that would be great.
Yeah, happy to do that, John. Thanks very much. So I'm a Chief Development Director for Explore AI. Explore AI is I think some of you will have seen some of the previous presentations, is a data science academy. It trains talented youngsters in data analytics, data science. And before I joined Explore AI, I was Chief Digital Officer at Thames Water. And Explore AI worked with me at Thames Water and has built a digital twin of our water asset base, an incredible achievement. And what Explore was able to do was bring high quality, pretty economically valuable data scientists and completely outperform anything that I have seen in any onshore or offshore market. And what you're about to see is a little case study presented by Aiden, the Chief Explorer on the Thames account, and John Regan, who was in my team at the time, who's in Thames Water and one of the digital operational executives who's been leading the Smart Water program. So I think we've got a little video to show where you can learn more about it.
Hello and welcome. My name is Aiden Helenbolt and I'm a Principal Data Scientist and Managing Executive for Explore AI. In this presentation, I would like to introduce you to my company, Explore AI, and the work that we do. I have one of our trusted clients, John Regan from Thames Water, with me, and he will provide a case study of our collaboration over the last 3 years. Explore is a data scientist first company. We started over 5 years ago as a team of actuaries and data scientists with the belief that we could create data science products that are able to solve some really big, important and challenging problems. As we stand today, we have 2 separate businesses that form a 2-pronged strategy for addressing the emerging digital skills gap in South Africa and indeed globally. On the left-hand side, we have the Explore Data Science Academy. This business is dedicated to solving the youth unemployment and widening digital skills gap in South Africa and into Africa. In the academy, we source, train, and ultimately deploy thousands of talented young Africans into better life circumstances by giving them a chance to deploy these newfound skills into a global market. This is where our Explore AI business comes in. The Explore AI suite of businesses aims to deploy squads of highly skilled data scientists and engineers into industry to build the next wave of AI solutions and intelligent data products at unbeatable economics. We have a proven track record in deploying production level systems that have transformed the operational models across multiple industries with some industry recognition along the way. The collaboration we are most proud of is the work we have done with Thames Water over the last 3 years as their preferred data science partner, which we'll be focusing on for the rest of this presentation. For this, I'm going to hand over to John Regan, who's Head of Data Innovation at Thames Water.
Hi there. My name is John Regan. I work for Thames. We are the largest water company in the UK. We've got about 15 million customers. We serve London and the Thames Valley. We've got thousands of treatment works, pumping stations and service reservoirs, and over 150,000 kilometres of linear assets, pipes and sewers across the network. So a complex network with lots of customers. And the reason why we've been working with Explore AI was really triggered sort of looking back a few years ago, a number of sort of really compelling events that hit us as a company and really caused a lot of regulatory interest, a lot of customers were impacted, generated a lot of cost for the organisation. And yeah, we were dealing with these incidents and issues and the legacy of them for a long time. And really they held up a a bit of a mirror to us and identified some systemic issues that we were having around data. We had lots of data, but it was in lots of different places. And we had concerns about the quality, governance and timeliness of that data. I mean, we spent a lot of time piecing that data together to try and create a view of actually what was happening. So what we and what that meant was we had a lot of time spent putting together data. Because we then didn't trust it, we spent a lot. We ended up making decisions based on intuition by a small number of experts, and also nobody was really able to look ahead and sort of say, well, actually, what might be going to happen in a few days' time. So as a result of that, out of that, we sort of created the vision for a data factory, and we set off on a journey of trying to deliver some better outcomes, largely using the data that we already had as an organisation. What we now have and what we've built over the last 3 years with working in collaboration with Explore is kind of a suite of these interconnected applications, or like an ecosystem of applications. They all sit on a common platform. They reuse lots of data objects. So what we don't have is, lots of different applications accessing the same systems in different ways. So we built a platform that allows us to sort of work consistently. And we're also delivering these applications into a number of different areas within our organisation. So into our control rooms, where we're helping people address how we manage supply interruptions, which is where we're going to focus our conversation today. But we're also delivering things into our field teams, into our waste business, and also into our asset management organisation. So we're really starting to use the data that we already had to really, I guess, create some new insights, but also through the application development capabilities that we've got, we're actually putting it in the hands of people so they can then turn that insight into action, and we can see, something shift in terms of one of our performance commitments, or one of our sort of key measures as a business. So that's the work that we've been doing, and we think we've got some sort of genuinely industry leading applications here. We've won a number of awards for a range of different elements, and yeah, we're really proud of this and feel like it gives us a great platform to kind of really accelerate in terms of our sort of digital transformation as an organisation. But what's also been really important is the kind of how we work. And yeah, I think the things that we've really learned are having the right relationship and the right person from our operational or asset management business. A product owner is really important, and making sure they really embed the user needs into the development team, not just at the start in a workshop, but throughout the development life cycle, to make sure that we're constantly demonstrating value. The platform approach we've taken, making sure that from a Thames perspective, we've put in place something that is going to be an enduring asset for us as an organisation, but gives us flexibility about who we might want to work with in future. So we're not tied into particular sort of platforms that certain companies might own, and we sort of don't have that flexibility in future. And then lastly, I think around collaboration, what's really important is for us has been finding the right partners, and Explore AI, the best example of that, who kind of come to us, are willing to challenge us and help, push back where, we're doing things wrong, we're still learning in this kind of agile and digital world. But they've actually really partnered with us and really sort of helped us adapt and create new capabilities, and they've given us access to skills and a culture actually that would have been difficult for us to access. So we've had a great experience, and Aiden's now just going to share some of the work that we've done.
Thank you very much for that, John. So I'm going to hand over to a demo of some of the products that we've built. These are at scale, worked in the control room, really focused on the supply interruption side of the business, really helping the control room manage the network. So in this example, you can see this is the Greater London area with the Thames Valley, and it gives you initially an overall view of the risk in the system. The risk is defined in this case where storage reservoirs are running lower than expected, which really helps the control room focus on emerging issues where previously they might have to go to 3 or 4 different systems to be able to get this view. As you zoom in, that wide scale picture goes down to a system and more assets show. So in this case, you've got the service reservoirs showing with more detailed information about the data coming in. Both in a geospatial and also a schematic view, which is a little bit easier for the operating control room to digest the connections between things. All of this information is consistent. We're jumping over to another part of the system, which is also in red alert there. So we can see that there's a red there and go through some other metrics. And you can see in this example that the storage reservoir has fallen quite quickly. So we can jump into that area of the map and we can quickly see the pressure profile. And this gives us a leading indicator of which customers would be affected by a lower pressure and therefore supply interruption. So we can really get ahead of the game in communicating to the customers and also to try and understand if we can resolve that issue, that impending issue, quicker. Throughout this, you can see we've added both the geospatial and then also the network meters. So each of these individual points is a network meter, and this gives us information about what's happening in real time on the network, so that the control room operators can respond. We've also been able to link the geospatial and the network meters together to really give contextual information around where supply interruptions might be occurring in the network. As you can see, we've been adding, in partnership with Thames Water, trying to figure out exactly the type of information that they would like to see. So here we've got a new feature that was launched with the customer contacts coming in via the control room, also being able to show if there's been a drop in pressure, for example. An additional feature that we've been able to add is to really try and address the point that John mentioned a little bit earlier about the trunk main bursts, right? So where there's a big network issue, to be able to see if we can mitigate it or even with data science stop it from happening in the past. So in this example, we can see that there was a big spike in flow and then dropping down, and now we can go back in time to any time within the last 8 days to see what the network looked like there. This is very helpful in incident response to the network to be able to understand what it looked like in the past, so that the control room operators can diagnose a fix going forward. Here you can see we've got the reservoirs, 2 different service reservoirs in the same network, and very quickly dropping below their thresholds, which points to an event. And I think we ended up localizing there was a burst in the field where that cursor is at the moment. That brings us to the end of our demo. Hopefully that shows you the ecosystem and the products that we're very proud to have built in partnership with Thames Water. Just touching on a lot of what John mentioned, and to speak from Explore AI's point of view, one of the things that we really try to help with is really create that compelling vision for the smart platform. We really supported their investment in the underlying infrastructure and the imagine ifs and what if scenarios that create a compelling piece of technology that allows them to answer questions that they might not know that they need to ask yet, which has been the benefit of the platform. We really help them to try and figure out which end-to-end products and use case would be the best priority order to be able to do that. And that priority criterion is based on sort of the technical feasibility and complexity, but probably more importantly, the ability to deliver business value and the willingness of that business to receive these new products. The third piece that we helped with is really instrumental in helping build the underlying data engineering infrastructure. Thames Water made a very bold strategic move 3 or 4 years ago to invest heavily in the Azure platform and partnered with Microsoft to be able to move them onto the cloud. They committed to a data lake on the Azure infrastructure, but they really needed us to support the technical infrastructure and creation of getting those platforms in place. In addition to that, most of the Explore resources embedded in Thames Water teams were helping build out data science and machine learning products, one of which we've showed you today. This has culminated, for example, in the application that we showed you winning the Data Science Project of the Year awards at the UK IT Awards last week, which is a nice piece of recognition for the work that we've been doing there. And then finally, to touch on the ways of working, which John alluded to earlier, we've learned a lot from Thames Water in putting together product teams that are empowered to deliver end-to-end features, working in direct collaboration with the business, and while using agile and software development principles as their go-to way of working. So finally, three things for growth for Explore Utilities. We, as I said, we're a data science focused first company. We love building custom AI products and solutions. We come now with utilities expertise, which we've learned with working with Thames Water. And because we're based in South Africa, we believe we offer unbelievable economics in deploying teams to be able to develop these custom solutions. We are investing and have proven with Thames Water our ability to build platforms as well as just products, really trying to focus on solving the problem once and then scaling it out, that solution out to multiple clients. And then to do that, you need to build good platforms. And then finally, one of the things that we're looking is with the Academy, we see a huge pipeline of talents coming onto the market, and we'd like to be able to uplift those individuals into better working scenarios by renting out data scientists and engineers, using our low-cost advantage, but ensuring the quality of it through the work that we've been doing on the Academy.
Thank you very much for a most fantastic case study, and a huge thank you to Mark. There were 3 Johns on the session. Thank you very much indeed to all you, and to Joel. Really, I think, insightful and constructive commentary on the way forward. And I just want to reflect on a few points you made before we wrap up in summary and then close the conference. So I think most importantly for us, after you talked through the scorecard of the 5 C's and where South Africa stands, was your point that you'd made, and we take it on board 100% of not being in an echo chamber, and would like to believe that as the conversations have unfolded today, there's also a level of authenticity about the way we think and plan, and a willingness to learn and get it right from how other countries have been successful and or failed, and to be really open and astute to what the factors for success are, so that we make the most of this incredible opportunity and the business capabilities by their depth and breadth and the incredible people in South Africa that we are able to do. So thank you for that, and thank you for a great session in really crystallizing all the key points made in the conference by drawing it back to the minds of the buyer and what's really important to you. So that draws our conference to a close. It's been a tremendous 2 days, extremely rich in content, presented by our local and global experts who are just so knowledgeable of their subject, so passionate about the GBS sector, and so vested in the success of South Africa as a leading delivery destination. Day 1 of the conference placed South Africa into context as a leading CX delivery destination, and we heard from our partners in government just how important the sector is to the economy, and the necessity to continue the high levels of collaboration we enjoy between government and industry. We heard about the economic outlook for South Africa and the continent, and all the reasons why it makes great business sense to invest in a winning industry, which the GBS sector is. With digital transformation at the top of the agenda for most nations, we also heard that the growth of economies is directly linked to expansion and adoption of digital connectivity. The theme of collaboration was reinforced again and again, but through the presentation of the work of the Global Technology and Business Services Council, and the investment opportunity in South Africa was spelt out by me and reinforced by Mark Angus when sharing insights from the 2021 GBS Investor Handbook, which is soon to be released. The focus then shifted to the practitioners on the demand and the supply side of the growth equation, where we began with reflections from experts on how BPOs should position themselves to win new business from our source markets. This flowed into the supply side with a focus on impact sourcing, demonstrating how providing access to marginalized communities not only fulfills a social responsibility that we all have, but unlocks immense talent pools that enable scale with very positive returns on investments. And finally, we heard from the rainmakers and buyers in the UK and USA and what they base their decisions on when deciding who to procure GBS services from and where to locate the work. And we take to heart the guidance that they've given us. And clearly emerging from that, we take a lot of confidence in this convergence of customer experience and human experience in South Africa and the African continent. And we look forward to expanding, as was mentioned, our capabilities and visibility, because we've been at this for a long time, but now want to make that story well known and be able to fulfill on the promise to our clients and our stakeholders. And all of this, was contextualized, I think, very well by the signing into action of the GBS Sector Master Plan, a framework that is a most significant milestone in the GBS growth journey in South Africa, which lays out the roadmap for the sector to 2030. And for what many of you may have missed in the morning sessions were the workshops and the masterclasses that tackle different aspects of the building blocks of that master plan and that journey. And I think when we think of that collectively, how it all needs to get pulled together, the right sequence, with the right levels of leadership and navigation, and obviously the right conditions in the markets that we must be sensitive to and capitalize on. It sets us very, very clear markers for our growth. And on that note, on behalf of the BPESA team and all our stakeholders in the industry, we declare the conference closed. Thank you again. Stay well.